There is a silent law of life that governs the progress of men and women who feel imprisoned by their own circumstances. It is the law of motion. The individual who remains idle, paralyzed by hesitation, or consumed by doubt, finds himself enslaved by the illusion of being stuck. Yet the moment he summons the courage to act, even for the briefest span of time, he unlocks forces that alter the course of his destiny. 10 minutes, when consecrated to deliberate purpose, possess the power to lift a man from despair to hope, from confusion to clarity, from stagnation to the steady march of progress. Consider the nature of time. Men often dismiss 10 minutes as insignificant, a fragment too small to carry weight in the shaping of a life, but this error of thinking blinds them to the truth that all great accomplishments are constructed from fragments, from moments seized rather than squandered. A book is written sentence by sentence. A fortune is gathered decision by decision. A reputation is built by acts repeated, not by grand gestures alone. And so it is with transformation. 10 minutes used with absolute intention becomes a wedge that splits the rock of inertia and lets the river of progress flow forth. When you declare, for the next 10 minutes I will not indulge in weakness, but will direct my mind toward one purposeful action, you are engaging in a sacred transaction with your own future. This is no mere trick of habit, no shallow exercise in temporary motivation. It is the conscious employment of your greatest power, the power to decide, to act, and to command your spirit to move. In those 10 minutes, you demonstrate mastery over yourself, and self-mastery is the foundation of every lasting achievement. Why 10 minutes? Because the mind rebels against vast undertakings when it is dulled by confusion or fatigue. Tell a weary soul to revolutionize its entire life in a single day, and it will recoil in terror at the immensity of the task. But instruct it to commit only 10 minutes to sit in silence, to write a plan, to breathe deliberately, to focus on a single goal, and it finds the burden light, the challenge manageable. Thus, 10 minutes becomes the gateway, the narrow path through which the spirit learns to move again. And once motion is begun, momentum follows, for action breeds action just as surely as thought breeds thought. History records countless men and women who rose from obscurity to greatness not by sudden miracles, but by the consistent investment of small, concentrated efforts. They did not wait for hours of perfect clarity, nor did they demand vast oceans of free time. Instead, they seized what they had and worked within it. The sculptor began with a single strike of the chisel. The statesman began with a single speech. The author began with a single page. In your own life, 10 minutes devoted to purposeful direction is not trivial. It is the very seed of greatness. Reflect upon this truth. 10 minutes of self-command proves to the mind that you are no longer a slave to hesitation. If you are drowning in confusion, those 10 minutes become a lifeboat. If you are surrounded by chaos, those 10 minutes create order. If you are weakened by failure, those 10 minutes ignite strength. What you do in that span matters less than the fact that you act with deliberate intent. Write down your thoughts. Draft the first line of a plan. Stretch your body. Study one page of wisdom. Reach out to one connection who can aid your advancement. In each case, you declare to the universe that you will not remain passive. 10 minutes performed faithfully each day become a ritual of transformation. Like a compass that turns a ship across an ocean, the consistent use of a small act recalibrates the course of your entire existence. You need not see the final destination in those moments. You need only to set the direction, to affirm that your will is alive and that you are determined to move forward. The man who learns to govern 10 minutes governs an hour. The man who governs an hour governs a day. And the man who governs his days eventually governs his life. Yet there is a mystery that accompanies this law. The moment you choose to devote yourself sincerely to such a brief but deliberate practice, unseen forces seem to align themselves with your purpose. Ideas long buried rise to the surface. Energy once dormant stirs in your veins. Solutions you never considered present themselves. It is as though the very act of disciplined commitment, though small in scope, sends a signal that awakens the sleeping powers of the mind. In that short span of time, you discover that the prison you believed surrounded you was never constructed of walls but of hesitation, and hesitation is shattered the instant you choose to act. There are those who will sneer at this truth, dismissing it as too simple, too easy, too unworthy of the grandeur of human ambition. But these same critics remain shackled, forever awaiting the perfect hour, the ideal plan, the stroke of fortune that never arrives. Meanwhile, the man who grasps the significance of 10 minutes advances beyond them, step by step, until he stands upon heights they never dared to climb. Simplicity is the secret path to greatness, for it is in the small and consistent acts that destiny is forged. If you feel lost, overwhelmed, or stagnant, know this: you are never powerless, never without choice. Begin with 10 minutes. Lock yourself away from distraction, silence the noise of the world, and choose one act that reflects your deepest desire for growth. Pour yourself fully into that act as though it were the most important duty of your life. Do not permit your mind to wander or your spirit to falter. Command yourself with authority, and you will feel the surge of energy that comes when a man or woman realizes they are no longer chained by their own indecision. The miracle of 10 minutes lies not in the action itself, but in the rebirth of your own authority over your life. The man who acts deliberately for 10 minutes learns that he can act for 20. The woman who holds her mind to purpose for 10 minutes learns that she can hold it for an hour. What once seemed impossible becomes attainable because you have proven to yourself in a small and undeniable way that you hold the reins of your destiny. The greatest prison a man can ever inhabit is not constructed of stone, nor is it guarded by iron gates. It is built silently within the mind, forged from the chains of doubt, fear, and habitual thought patterns that whisper to him that change is impossible, that progress is beyond his reach, that he is destined to remain where he stands. These chains are invisible, yet they are heavier than lead. They keep the strongest men bowed down and the most gifted women silenced. And yet, like all illusions, they can be shattered the very moment the mind learns to redirect its gaze. Understand this. Your focus is the torch that lights your path. Where it is pointed, your life moves. If you direct it toward past failures, you walk in the shadows of regret. If you turn it toward imagined obstacles, you stumble upon fears that have no substance. But if you shift it, even for an instant, toward possibility, toward opportunity, toward the seed of power within yourself, the chains begin to fall away. For no chain, however strong, can withstand the light of a renewed vision. To feel stuck is to live under the tyranny of unbroken thought patterns. You rehearse the same frustrations, the same doubts, the same inner monologue until it forms a rut in the mind. And in that rut you circle endlessly, mistaking motion for progress, yet never advancing an inch. The cure for this imprisonment is not to labor in the rut, digging it deeper with more complaints and more hesitation, but to lift your focus upward and outward, to declare to your mind, I will not remain here, I will look upon something higher. That declaration, small though it may seem, is the first strike of the hammer against your chains. When a man shifts his focus deliberately, he alters the entire chemistry of his thought. A new vision stirs the spirit. The eyes brighten, the breath deepens, the posture lifts. The mind, once preoccupied with its own misery, begins to perceive possibilities that were always present, but long ignored. This is not magic, though it may feel miraculous. It is the natural law of attention. What you fix upon expands, and what you neglect withers away. By choosing where to place your focus, you choose which reality you will inhabit. The tragedy of so many lives is not lack of opportunity, but lack of focus. Men drift aimlessly, staring upon distractions that sap their energy, gazing upon grievances that inflame their bitterness, fastening their attention upon all that is wrong instead of all that could be right. They allow the weeds of negative thought to overrun the fertile garden of their mind, and then they wonder why no fruit appears. Yet in the instant they decide to shift their gaze to dwell not upon misery but upon possibility, they discover that the soil of their mind is still alive, still capable of producing abundance, still rich with the seeds of destiny. Shifting focus does not require long preparation, nor does it demand perfect conditions. It requires only a decision. For 10 minutes, you may choose to take your attention away from every voice that tells you it cannot be done and fix it upon a single idea that says, I will find a way. You may choose to withdraw your focus from worry and place it upon gratitude for what remains within your power. You may choose to abandon the endless rehearsal of problems and instead ask, what can I build with the tools I have at hand? In that moment of shifting, your chains rattle, your prison begins to crumble, and freedom rushes in. To understand the power of this, consider the man who awakens each day heavy with despair. He tells himself his work is meaningless, his progress invisible, his future sealed. Each thought he entertains strengthens his shackles until he barely has the will to rise from bed. Yet one morning, in the midst of his gloom, he takes a scrap of paper and writes, "What if I could use today to create one small victory?" As he writes, his focus shifts. His eyes rise from the darkness to the faint light of possibility. And though nothing external has changed in that instant, he himself has changed. He has lifted his mind from bondage, if only by an inch, and in that inch lies the beginning of a new life. The chains of the mind are cunning. They whisper, "This is permanent. You will always remain as you are." But the truth proven by countless men and women before you is that permanence is an illusion. The only true permanence is the law of change itself. Nothing remains fixed except the power of choice that lives within you, and that choice is activated the instant you shift your focus. You are not required to know the entire path ahead. You are required only to direct your gaze toward a higher thought, to fix your attention upon what you desire rather than what you fear, and to act in alignment with that new vision for even the briefest span of time. If you doubt this, reflect upon the simple truth of your own experience. Recall a moment when you felt despair, when you were convinced that nothing could change. And then remember how a single conversation, a single idea, or a single decision lifted you out of that darkness. The circumstances may not have changed instantly, but your mind did. And once your mind shifted, your actions followed, and life itself bent in a new direction. That was not accident. That was not chance. That was the law of focus revealing its power. Therefore, when you feel stuck, when the weight of stagnation presses upon you, do not waste your strength wrestling with the chains directly. Simply shift your focus. Direct your attention with intention. Break the loop of repetitive thoughts by commanding your mind to dwell upon something higher. In 10 minutes of disciplined focus, you will do more to free yourself than in 10 hours of complaint. You will discover that the walls around you are not made of stone, but of thoughts, and thoughts can be replaced the moment you choose. The instant you grasp this truth, you cease to be a prisoner of your own mind. You recognize that freedom is not given by fortune or withheld by fate. It is claimed by the one who dares to redirect his vision. And once that vision is lifted, the path ahead reveals itself, step by step, until the very chains that once held you become the fragments of your past, never again strong enough to bind you. The world is filled with men and women who postpone progress because they believe clarity must arrive before action. They sit in silence, waiting for the perfect plan to descend upon them, imagining that one day they will awaken with every answer neatly revealed. Yet such a day never comes, for clarity is not born of waiting, it is born of doing. The fog that clouds the mind does not lift through passive thought, but through the heat of deliberate motion. A single step taken with intent clears more confusion than 100 hours spent in idle speculation. To feel stuck is to believe the lie that you must have it all figured out before you begin. This is the most dangerous deception of the human mind. It whispers that you cannot start until you see the entire path, until you are guaranteed success, until you know precisely where every turn will lead. And while you wait for that impossible moment, life slips past. Opportunities fade, energy diminishes, and you remain trapped in the paralysis of endless preparation. The man who demands perfect clarity before acting becomes like a sailor who refuses to leave the harbor until he sees the entire ocean. He will never depart, for no such vision exists. Clarity is revealed through the process of action itself. When you commit to 10 minutes of deliberate effort, you pierce the fog of uncertainty. You may not know the final destination, but you illuminate the next step. And once that step is taken, the one beyond it becomes visible. Life unfolds in this manner, not in grand revelations, but in steady discoveries that come only to those who move. The path is not revealed to the idle dreamer. It is revealed to the one who dares to walk. Think of the writer who faces a blank page, consumed by doubt about how his story should unfold. He may sit motionless, waiting for inspiration, paralyzed by the enormity of the task. But the instant he places a word upon the page, however imperfect, His mind begins to respond. The story takes form, ideas emerge, characters come alive. The clarity he longed for does not descend before he begins. It is born in the very act of beginning. So it is with every endeavor in life. Action precedes clarity, never the reverse. The law that governs this truth is simple. Motion creates vision. When the waters of a lake are still, the sediment sinks and clarity returns. When the mind is stagnant, confusion dominates, but the moment you stir it with deliberate action, the chaos begins to settle and the direction becomes clear. 10 minutes of purposeful effort is the stirring of the waters. It breaks the paralysis of thought and allows truth to rise to the surface. This is why deliberate action, however small, carries such immense power. It is not the size of the act that matters, but the intention behind it. Sweep a corner of your room with full presence, and you will find your spirit lifted. Write down a single goal, and you will feel your mind sharpening. Call one person who might aid your cause, and you will sense momentum gathering. The clarity that seemed so distant emerges not because the world has changed, but because you have changed. You are no longer paralyzed by the illusion of uncertainty. You are engaged in the process of creation. The greatest achievements of history were not launched in moments of perfect clarity, but in moments of decisive action. The pioneers who carved new paths did not wait until every danger was accounted for. They set forth step by step and discovered clarity as they progressed. The inventors who gave the world new wonders did not begin with flawless visions. They began with attempts, with experiments, with trials that revealed the way forward. So too must you learn that waiting for clarity is a form of surrender, but taking action is an act of command. The man who dares to act, even when uncertain, declares to the universe that he is ready to be guided, and the universe responds. For clarity is the reward of courage. It does not favor the idle thinker, but the bold doer. 10 minutes of deliberate work each day is not merely practice, it is an invitation to clarity itself. As you move, doors open. As you attempt, understanding deepens. As you commit, vision sharpens. And what once seemed impossible begins to take shape before your very eyes. The illusion of being stuck dissolves the moment you realize that action itself is the cure. You do not need the entire map. You need only to take the first step with purpose. Each action you take writes the next line of your story, reveals the next piece of the puzzle, clears the next section of the fog. The man who acts learns more in 10 minutes than the man who thinks endlessly for 10 days. This is why deliberate action is sacred. It is the bridge between confusion and clarity, between despair and hope, between stagnation and momentum. Clarity is not a lightning strike, it is the sunrise. It grows brighter as you continue to move forward, but you must begin with a spark, with the humble flame of action, no matter how small. To sit in darkness waiting for the sun is to waste precious hours. To light a candle and take a step is to invite the dawn. The discipline of 10 minutes devoted to deliberate, intentional action is that candle, and once lit, it has the power to banish the shadows that have held you captive. Confidence is not a gift handed down by fortune, nor is it a mystery granted to a chosen few. It is born in the instant a man or woman takes full ownership of the present moment. The individual who complains of weakness, who trembles before decisions, who hides behind excuses, has surrendered his authority to external forces. He waits for permission, for favorable circumstances, for some sign that the time is right. And while he waits, his confidence withers. But the moment he declares, "This moment is mine and I will command it," his spirit shifts. Strength begins to rise, not from outside, but from within. The truth many ignore is that confidence is not something you wait to feel before you act. It is something you generate by acting in the face of uncertainty. The timid man insists that once he feels sure of himself, he will step forward. But this day never comes, for certainty is the fruit of action, not its root. The bold man, though unsure, seizes the moment and acts as though he already possesses the confidence he seeks. And in the act of doing, he discovers that confidence has been his companion all along, waiting to be awakened. To take ownership of the moment means to recognize that for these 10 minutes you are not bound by the weight of your past, nor paralyzed by the vastness of your future. You are free to command yourself, to decide what you will do now, to exercise the authority you already hold. Most people miss this simple truth. They believe their power is delayed until circumstances improve, until resources multiply, until knowledge increases, yet all power is contained in the present moment. and the one who dares to claim it discovers that he is stronger than he ever believed. The man who feels stuck often cries out, "I lack confidence," but what he truly lacks is ownership. He is like a soldier who refuses to grasp the sword lying at his feet, insisting instead that he must first feel like a warrior. Confidence does not precede the grip. It is born the moment he takes hold of the weapon and decides to wield it. So it is with your life. Do not wait for courage to descend upon you. Seize the present. Act now. Take ownership of the moment, and confidence will rise to meet you. Consider the power of 10 minutes lived in complete ownership. In such a short span, you may accomplish a single deliberate act that reminds you of your strength. You may stand tall, breathe deeply, and speak with conviction. You may write down a vision for your future and declare aloud that you will pursue it. You may reach out to someone with authority and ask for what you desire. In each case, you send a signal not only to the world, but to your own spirit that you are no longer content to drift. You are a commander, not a passenger. Ownership requires responsibility. It is easy to surrender your life to chance, to blame circumstances, to accuse others for your stagnation. But every act of blame strips you of confidence, for it reminds you that your fate is in another's hands. Confidence blooms only when you reclaim responsibility. Say to yourself, if I am to rise, it is because I will raise myself. If I am to succeed, it is because I will create success. If I am to live a life of power, it is because I will seize power now. Such declarations are not mere words. They are anchors that root you firmly in the ground of ownership. And from that ground, confidence grows tall and unshakable. You must understand that confidence is not the absence of fear. It is the mastery of fear through decision. Every man of achievement has trembled before action. Every woman of greatness has felt the weight of doubt, but they chose to act regardless. And in that choice, they became masters of their moment. That mastery, repeated daily, builds into a fortress of confidence so strong that no storm can topple it. The timid man seeks confidence before acting, and so he remains timid. The wise man acts first, and confidence follows. 10 minutes each day devoted to ownership becomes a training ground for your spirit. In those minutes, you practice commanding yourself, and each time you succeed, your confidence deepens. The repetition of this act transforms your identity. You cease to say, "I am uncertain," and begin to say, "I am capable of deciding." You cease to whisper, "I am afraid," and begin to declare, "I am willing." You cease to identify with hesitation and begin to identify with mastery. Confidence, then, is not a fleeting emotion. It is the natural state of one who has proven, through repeated ownership of the moment, that he is capable of governing his own life. The tragedy of many lives is that they underestimate the power of a single owned moment. They dismiss 10 minutes as trivial, forgetting that destiny is shaped not by years at once, but by moments faithfully commanded. The soldier is trained not by a single battle, but by drills repeated until mastery is ingrained. The orator is not born with confidence, but develops it by speaking, stumbling, correcting, and speaking again. The builder does not create a cathedral in a day, but lays one stone with full ownership of that act, and then another, and then another. If you will own your moments one by one, you will one day awaken to find yourself standing upon the heights of confidence built stone by your own hands. Confidence is not a prize to be won, nor a treasure to be found. It is a creation, born anew each time you take ownership of your present. The more faithfully you practice this, the more natural it becomes, until one day you discover that ownership is your default state, and confidence flows from you effortlessly, as naturally as breath itself. But you must begin with 10 minutes. You must begin by refusing to surrender your present to hesitation, to fear, to doubt. You must begin by declaring that this moment belongs to you, and you alone hold the authority to shape it. There is a mystery hidden in plain sight, one that few ever master, though it stands as the foundation of every great life. It is the mystery of repetition, of ritual, of small acts compounded over time until they produce results so vast that the world calls them miraculous. Men admire the mountain but ignore the grains of sand that form it. They marvel at the forest but forget that each tree began as a seed. They praise the genius but overlook the daily habits that shaped his mind. In the same way, they overlook the truth that a mere 10 minutes, when repeated faithfully, has the power to alter the entire course of a lifetime. One act, performed once, may inspire, but one act, performed daily, transforms. The mind is not strengthened by occasional effort, but by consistent discipline. The body does not grow strong through a single exertion, but through repeated training. The spirit does not rise to greatness in a solitary burst of enthusiasm, but in steady devotion to a chosen path. And so it is with your 10 minutes. If you treat them as a passing exercise, you will feel their spark, but soon return to darkness. But if you consecrate them as a ritual, as a daily command of yourself, then they will accumulate into a force so mighty it will lift you beyond anything you once believed possible. Understand this: the brain is malleable, the spirit is shapeable, the character is moldable. Each day you train them whether you are aware of it or not. If you spend your time indulging in hesitation, complaining, or drifting without purpose, you are training your mind to surrender, your spirit to weaken, your character to decay. But if for 10 minutes each day you choose deliberate action, focused thought, and conscious ownership, you are training yourself in mastery. Over weeks and months, mastery becomes your nature. Over years, it becomes your destiny. The power of ritual lies not in its length, but in its consistency. 10 minutes may seem too short to matter, but it is not the length of time that transforms you. It is the daily return to a chosen act of power. Each day you repeat it, you send a message to your mind: I am the one who commands, I am the one who directs, I am the one who acts. Over time, your mind accepts this message as truth. Doubt weakens, hesitation fades, and confidence becomes instinct. You are no longer struggling to believe in yourself. You know yourself, and this knowing is the foundation of transformation. The man who practices a daily ritual of focused effort discovers that what once required discipline soon becomes natural. At first, he must fight his resistance, force himself to concentrate, push against the inertia of his old habits. But with each repetition, the resistance diminishes. What was once effort becomes habit. What was once habit becomes character. And what was once character becomes destiny. In this way, 10 minutes a day evolves from a small exercise into the architect of a lifetime. Think of the farmer who waters his crops daily. Each act is small, seemingly insignificant, but over time the harvest comes, abundant and undeniable. Think of the craftsman who sharpens his tool each morning. Each stroke is minor, yet in time his blade is keen enough to cut through anything. So it is with your ritual. At first it may appear small, unworthy of reverence, but in time it sharpens you, strengthens you, and produces a harvest so great that others will wonder how it came to be. They will not see the ritual, but you will know that it was built 10 minutes at a time. A daily ritual does more than shape your habits. It reshapes your identity. Each time you practice it, you confirm to yourself that you are not a drifter, but a commander, not a victim, but a creator. And identity is destiny. The man who believes he is weak will act weakly. The woman who believes she is powerless will surrender. But the one who trains his mind daily to believe in strength, to act with purpose, to command the moment, cannot help but rise. For his ritual has carved into his soul the truth that he is capable, worthy, and unstoppable. In this lies the secret of lifetime transformation. Not in sudden leaps, not in dramatic gestures, not in desperate attempts to change everything overnight, but in steady, deliberate rituals that recondition the mind and spirit. 10 minutes a day, practiced faithfully, rewires the brain, renews the heart, and reshapes the life. It creates momentum that compounds, discipline that hardens, vision that sharpens. And in time, you look back and see that what began as a simple exercise has become the very foundation of your greatness. Do not despise the small beginning. Do not sneer at the humble ritual, for within it lies the seed of every achievement you seek. Devote yourself to it as a sacred act, not something to be rushed or neglected, but something to be honored each day as proof that you are alive, awake, and in command of your destiny. 10 minutes is all it takes to change the direction of your life. And when those minutes become a ritual, they do not merely change your direction. They change your very being.